After the surrender of Nazi Germany in World War II, the Allied powers, the United States, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union, agreed to establish an international military tribunal. The trial against the major war criminals held at Nuremberg, known as the Nuremberg Trials. The tribunal tried 24 of the Third Reich's most important military officers and Nazi political leaders at the Nuremberg Trials. Among them were Wilhelm Frick and Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Ernst Kaltenbrunner, Austrian Nazi leader and a high-ranking SS officer. He was born on 4th October 1903 in Rieden-Innkreis, Austria. Raised in a nationalist family, his father was a lawyer. He was educated at the Royal Gymnasium, the most advanced education in the German secondary school system at the time. He was also a childhood friend of Adolf Eichmann, the infamous SS officer who played a key role in implementing the Nazis' final solution against Europe's Jews. After gymnasium, Kaltenbrunner completed his PhD in law and political science at the Graz University in 1926 and worked as a lawyer in Salzburg, and later in 1928 he opened his own law office in Linz. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall and with deep scars on his face from dueling in his student days. Some sources attribute them to a car accident. Kaltenbrunner joined the Austrian Nazi Party on 18 October 1930 and joined the SS on 31 August 1931. He was the district speaker for the Nazi Party in Upper Austria and in 1933 became head of the National Socialist Lawyers League in Linz. He married Elisabeth Eder on January 14, 1934, who was also a Nazi Party member. The couple had 3 children. Kaltenbrunner also had twins, Ursula and Wolfgang, with his longtime mistress, Gisela Gräfin von Westarp. All the children survived the war. In January 1934, Kaltenbrunner was briefly imprisoned at the Kaisersteinbruch detention camp with other Nazis for conspiracy by the Engelbert Dollfuss government. In 1934, he was imprisoned again on suspicion of high treason in the assassination of Engelbert Dollfuss. This accusation was dropped, but he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for conspiracy and lost his license to practice law. In 1937, he was arrested again by the Austrian authorities on charges of heading the illegal Nazi Party organization and was released in September. On 13 March 1938, Kaltenbrunner assisted in the Anschluss with Nazi Germany. The Anschluss was the annexation of the Austria into the Nazi Germany. After the Anschluss, Adolf Hitler promoted Kaltenbrunner to SS Brigade Führer and then, on 11 September 1938, to the rank of SS Gruppenführer in the army. He helped establish the Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camp near Linz. Mauthausen was the first Nazi concentration camp opened in Austria following the Anschluss. The Nazis were anti-Semitic. They saw the Jews as a problem. This was what the Nazis called the Jewish question. To carry out the final solution to the Jewish question, the Nazis created killing centers to carry out mass murder. The Nazis began to systematically commit mass killings of Jews after Germany attacked the Soviet Union in June 1941. The Nazis used gas chambers and mobile gas vans to mass murder Jews. Kaltenbrunner was a committed anti-Semite. According to SS Sturmbannführer Hans-Georg Mayer, Kaltenbrunner was present at a meeting between Hitler, Goebbels, Himmler and Heydrich in December 1940, where it was decided to gas all Jews who were unfit for work. After the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich in June 1942, Kaltenbrunner replaced Heydrich as chief of the Reich Security Main Office in January 1943. The RSHA included the offices of the SD and the security police, the combined forces of the Gestapo and Kripo. He held this position until the end of World War II. On 20th July 1944, an assassination attempt was made on Hitler's life but failed. Kaltenbrunner was assigned to begin the investigation into who was responsible for the assassination attempt. The conspirators were soon identified. An estimated 5,000 people were eventually executed, and many were sent to concentration camps. Kaltenbrunner was one of Hitler's staunchest loyalists and was described as committed to Hitler to the bitter end. He was awarded the Knight's Cross of the War Merit Cross with Swords on 15 November 1944 and was also awarded the Nazi Party Golden Party Badge and the Blut Orden. On 18 April 1945, 3 weeks before the end of the war, Himmler appointed Kaltenbrunner commander-in-chief of the remaining German forces in Southern Europe. The Soviet Red Army was advancing on Berlin. He was present at the Führer bunker. Realizing that the end of the war was near, he fled Berlin. After Adolf Hitler committed suicide on 30 April 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allies on 7 May. On 15 May 1945, Kaltenbrunner was captured by US intelligence team. He was found hiding in a remote cabin at the top of the Todesgebirge mountains in Austria. He was tried at Nuremberg trial, charged with conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. He was also charged with involvement in the murder of 50 British prisoners of war who escaped from the prison camp but were later recaptured. He was absent from the early stages of the Nuremberg trials due to a subarachnoid hemorrhage which required several weeks of recovery. After his recovery, he was brought to the court in a wheelchair. He pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Kaltenbrunner argued in his defense that his position as chief of the RSHA existed only theoretically. Himmler, as his superior, was the person responsible for the atrocities committed during his tenure as chief of the RSHA. He was only active in matters of espionage and intelligence. All decrees and legal documents that bore his signature were rubber-stamped and filed by his assistant. Also asserted that he had no knowledge of the final solution before 1943, and he protested against the ill treatment of the Jews to Himmler and Hitler. The International Military Tribunal found Kaltenbrunner not guilty of crimes against peace, but guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and sentenced him to death by hanging. Kaltenbrunner was executed on 16 October 1946 around 1:15 a.m. in Nuremberg, along with the 9 other condemned defendants from the first Nuremberg trial. On the scaffold, asked if he had any last words, Kaltenbrunner said, "I have loved my German people and my fatherland with a warm heart. I have done my duty by the loss of my people, and I am sorry my people were led this time by men who were not soldiers, and that crimes were committed of which I had no knowledge." As the black hood on his head, Kaltenbrunner in a low voice said, "Germany, good luck." His body, like those of the other 9 executed men, was cremated at the Eastern Cemetery in Munich, and the ashes were scattered in a tributary of the river Isar. Wilhelm Frick, first Nazi minister. He was born on 12 March 1877 in Olsens, Bavaria, German Empire. He attended the gymnasium. Gymnasium is the most advanced and highest of German secondary schools in the German education system. After finishing school, he went to study philology at the University of Munich, but switched to study law at the Humboldt University of Berlin and at Heidelberg University, and was awarded a doctorate in law in 1901. He joined the Bavarian Civil Service in 1903, worked for the district government in Upper Bavaria. He did not serve in World War I because he was rejected for health reasons. Frick married Elisabetha Emilia Nagel in 1910 and had 2 sons and a daughter. They divorced in 1934, and on 12 March 1934 he remarried Margarete Schulze-Naumburg, ex-wife of Nazi Reichstag MP Paul Schulze-Naumburg. They had a son and a daughter. Frick sympathized with right-wing Freikorps paramilitary units. He joined Hitler's nationalist movement very early and helped Hitler get permission to hold political rallies and demonstrations. He became head of the political department of the Munich police in 1923. In November 1923, Frick participated in the Munich Beer Hall Putsch, which attempted to overthrow the German Republican government. After the failed coup, he was arrested and convicted of high treason for his involvement in Hitler's Munich Putsch and sentenced to 15 months in prison in 1924. He was dismissed from the police for misconduct, but the Bavarian disciplinary court declared his dismissal unfair and revoked on the grounds that his treasonous intention had not been proven. Frick served for a short term and was released after being elected to the Reichstag for the German National Freedom Party, a replacement organization for the banned National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. He became a leading figure of the Nazi Party in the Reichstag. Hitler wrote about Frick in his book Mein Kampf when he stated that Frick was one of the few men he knew who had the courage to be German first and then officials. In addition to his parliamentary work, he works as a civil servant at the Munich Higher Insurance Office. In the federal election of 20th May 1928, Frick was one of the first 12 deputies elected to the Reichstag as Nazi Party members. He befriended fellow radical Nazi Gregor Strasser. He made a name for himself with aggressively anti-democratic and anti-Semitic speeches. He became the leader of the Nazi Party's parliamentary group in the Reichstag in 1928. In 1929, the Nazi Party joined the coalition government in the state of Thuringia. The Nazis received the Minister of State of the Interior and Education. On 23 January 1930, Frick was appointed to this minister, becoming the first Nazi member to hold a ministerial-level position at any level in Germany. He used his position to dismiss communist and social democratic officials and replace them with Nazi Party members. He was removed from office by a social democratic motion of no confidence in the Thuringian parliament on 1 April 1931. On January 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg appointed Nazi Party leader Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany, the head of the German government. After the Nazi Party came to power, Frick became Reichsminister of the Interior. Along with Hermann Göring, he was one of only 2 Nazi Reichsministers in the original Hitler cabinet. The main reason that Hindenburg and Franz von Papen agreed to give the Nazis the Interior Ministry because it was almost powerless at the time. After the Reichstag Fire Decree and the Enabling Act of 1933, Frick's power increased dramatically. The Enabling Act of 1933 was a law that gave the German cabinet the power to make and implement laws without the involvement of the Reichstag or Weimar President Paul von Hindenburg, leading to the rise of Nazi Germany. He played a major role in creating the National Socialist system of government. He initiated and drafted the law against the formation of parties, which formally made the Nazi Party the only legal party in Germany, and also played a major role in implementing racist laws such as the Nuremberg Laws of 1935. After the Enabling Act, all state officials were responsible to Frick. In 1935, Frick was given the power to appoint all mayors to cities and towns with a population of 100,000 or more. The only cities excluded were Berlin and Hamburg, that were the preserve of Hitler. Frick also took a leading part in Germany's rearmament in violation of the 1919 Versailles Treaty. But his power was greatly reduced in June 1936 when Hitler appointed Himmler as head of the German police, effectively merging the police with the SS. On 30th August 1939, before the outbreak of World War II, he was appointed by Hitler to 6-member Council of Ministers for Defense of the Reich, which served as the War Cabinet. In August 1943, he was replaced by Heinrich Himmler as Interior Minister. However, he remained in the cabinet as a Reichsminister without portfolio. Apart from Hitler, Frick and Lutz Graf Schwerin von Krosigk were the only members of the Third Reich's cabinet who served continuously from Hitler's appointment as Chancellor until his death in 1945. Frick was then appointed as protector of Bohemia and Moravia to replace Heydrich, who was assassinated. He used ruthless methods to hunt down those he believed were fighting against the Nazis. Its capital, Prague, was one of the last Axis-held cities to fall at the end of World War II in Europe. After the end of the war, Frick was arrested and tried at the Nuremberg trials. He was the only defendant, other than Rudolf Hess, who refused to testify on his own behalf. He was charged of planning, waging wars of aggression, crimes against humanity and war crimes. He was accused of having full knowledge of the concentration camps, and for his role as Minister of the Interior in drafting the Enabling Act, which brought the German nation completely under the control of the Nazi Party, and the Nuremberg Laws, laws under which people were sent to concentration camps, many of whom were murdered there. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Wilhelm Frick was hanged at Nuremberg prison on 16 October 1946, along with the 9 other condemned defendants from the first Nuremberg trial. Before being hooded, his last words on the gallows were, "Long live eternal Germany." His body, along with 9 others executed men and Hermann Göring's body, was cremated at the Ostfriedhof cemetery in Munich, and the ashes were scattered in the river Isar. If you find our videos interesting and informative, please subscribe to our channel The Past Quest